Welcome to Words of Wokism number 24. The word today is social. Before I get started explaining what social means in the woke context, I would like to remind viewers that woke, as I use it at The Reason We Learn, simply means social justice oriented. It means a lot more than that. But for shorthand purposes, it's a lens through which people look at pretty much everything. So if you're going to look at every word or every concept or every thought that you have, every piece of information you need to evaluate, every problem you seek to solve, whatever it is that you're looking at in life, especially if you need to make some kind of judgment about it. If you do that through a lens of how does this reflect or affect the goal, the ultimate best goal in the world, the highest value of achieving social justice, then you're woke. Now, another way to look at it is how collectivist someone is. In other words, how much they see the self, the individual self, as primary, and how much they see society and ordering society in a way that they would like. Those people are also woke because you can have right wing social justice, you can have left wing social justice, you can have a lot in between. But if your first thought is, how does this impact others? What is my responsibility to others? How do others see this? What are others going to say? That's a woke way of looking at the world. When you don't start with, what do I think? And not what do I feel, but what do I think? How am I perceiving this using scientific method, my five senses, and then deciding after I take in all the facts and the objective information about it that I possibly can, then maybe I'll formulate an emotion about it. That would be unwoke. That's using reason. So just to get that out there. But it's a good lead in actually to the word social. So before we get started with that, let's take a look at the definition, so called, that Wikipedia has of social. Social organisms, including humans, live collectively in interacting populations. Okay. This interaction is considered social whether they're aware of it or not, and whether the exchange is voluntary or not. The word social derives from the Latin word socii, so I think that's how it's pronounced, allies. Is that familiar? It is particularly derived from the Italian socii states, historical allies of the Roman Republic, although they rebelled against Rome in the Social War of 91 through 87 BC. The social theorists, in the view of Karl Marx, I know you're shocked. Human beings are intrinsically, necessarily, and by definition, social beings who, beyond being gregarious creatures, cannot survive and meet their needs other than through social cooperation and association. Their social characteristics are therefore, to a large extent, an objectively given fact, stamped on them from birth, stamped from the beginning, one might say. Sound familiar? And affirmed by socialization processes. But what about socialization, Deb? I mean, homeschooling, they won't get socialized. By whom and for what? And according to Marx, in producing and reproducing their material life, people must necessarily enter into relations of production which are independent of their will. This is according to Marx. Independent of their will. You can you can hear the refutation of free will embedded in that. Like it doesn't exist. By contrast, the sociologist Max Weber, for example, defines human action as social if, by virtue of the subjective meanings attached to the action by individuals, it takes account of the behaviors of others and is thereby oriented in its course. And then it goes on to talk about socialism, et cetera. But that's your basic definition of social: allied with others, inherently dependent on others, essentially. Others define you to a much larger extent than even you are aware of, involuntarily. Now, that's a tough one to prove, isn't it? I mean, people can make a case. They can certainly make a case. You know, could say you can't survive without the labor of other people, and you can't survive without other people, period. That if you try to be a loner, et cetera, and just go off and live on your own, eventually you're gonna, need to interact with other people at some point to survive or thrive. But what these social theorists and the people today using the word social in a woke context fail to consider is that it is also rational to be a social creature. In other words, that human beings having the capacity for reason are perfectly capable, even as quickly as they can think about how to drive a car. So we're wired to be able to do this very, very quickly, to reason that it is to our advantage to partner with other people, to associate with other people, to live with other people, to love other people, to be loved by other people. These are consistent with rational thought. There's absolutely nothing that says it's automatically void of free will that you would do that. That just because there's a need, and again, we could debate that. It is actually possible to be completely self sufficient, especially in the 21st century. You could learn all you need to know from other people, let's say, by your own volition, and then go off and live completely alone if you wanted to. People don't want to. And you might say, well, Deb, aren't we hardwired to not want to? Probably, because it does enhance our chances of survival, which is pretty much what evolution did for us, was give us the, the people who survived were the ones who adapted best to the conditions that were making their survival more challenging. So, yes, I would say the inclination to associate with, partner with, do business with, et cetera, with other people to enhance our chances of survival is there. But it does not then follow that we have no free will, or that because that might be a fact, that we have that inclination, that anyone else can or should make appropriate decisions for us regarding what our society, the social structures or constructs around us should look like. Who the hell could do that? I wouldn't presume to do that for someone else. That is where the free will comes in. Deciding who your friends are, deciding who you marry, who you want to have sex with, deciding, even where you want to shop or not shop, live or not live. These are decisions that people make. People choose their society, their allies. And in the woke world, when they use social, especially in a school environment, they tend to use it in such a way as to convey that it's a kind of determinism. That if you're born, for example, black, into a particular, into a particular neighborhood or a particular class or whatever, but you're black, then no matter where you go, the social awareness of you and your social awareness towards other people is defined by that blackness. It's defined. Or go no free will. It's defined by you being black. If you're female, it's defined by you being female. If you're gay, it's defined by being gay. If you are trans, which in and of itself is a choice. Okay? There's no biological indication that people decide, like that takes the place of deciding that they want to actually live out the dysphoria that they're experiencing. That's still a choice. A fair number of choices, actually, cascading choices. But that determines who your allies are, that determines how a society is going to see you. It's determined. Nothing else you do in your behavior is going to make a difference. Ergo, we have to change others. We have to change the social order. We have to change these supposed social constructs, which, what, just like came up out of nowhere? Or did they come into being because people made choices across millennia that enhanced their survival, and those ended up being the dominant choices that people made? over and over and over again. They just quickly made these decisions and said, yeah, that works. Seems to enhance my survival. So I'm going to follow that kind of social thing. And if you're not happy with that reality, rather than just change how you react in that surrounding or how you make your choices of people with whom you want to socialize as an individual so that you find other people who are more like-minded, etc. No, it becomes an imperative to change the social order. So deterministic, is it? It's not free will. We're just born this way. White people, black people, Hispanic people, whatever. And even if you manage to engage someone in a debate in the education space and say, do you really believe that? That across all these years, people made no choices. It was all just automatic. It was foisted upon them. They were not liberated from these constructs. So they didn't really make choices. They had no free will. So let's say you believe that. Like I said, where did they originally come from? Someone initially did the foisting, did the designing. And if that's wrong to do, if that was wrong of them, what makes it right of you? If it was wrong to do to the like free living, like Rousseauian native, savages or whatever you want to call them that were just like little children roaming in the wilderness, feral, and along came society, the evil, bad, oppressive oppressors, and made a decision about social constructs and said, this is what your life is going to be like, women. This is what your life is going to be like. If that's wrong, because they completely trampled any form of agency or drive on the part of those individuals, they needed to be liberated from that. What makes it suddenly right for you to do? How do you know what all these children need individually? Why are you so eager to replace oppressive social constructs that someone didn't choose with another set of social constructs that someone didn't choose individually for themselves? And generally, when I go there, they kind of get stumped or tell me just a bigot or I just hate people or something. You don't understand reality. Don't I, though? Don't I? Well, the reality is that I've chosen each and every one of my friends. I've chosen my husband. I chose whether to have kids and how many. I chose how to raise them. Then I've supported them in making choices about their own friends and so on and so forth. We chose where to live, and we told me where to do that, and so on. So I can look at reality and say, I individually made those choices. And you can tell me all day long, no, you didn't. No, you didn't. Society made you do that. And show me the evidence. Show me the evidence that I did not choose my home and where I live now. How are you going to do that? I did. And I could pick up tomorrow and choose to go somewhere else. And we have millions of people streaming across our border, choosing to leave everything behind to come here. You're going to tell me they're being forced to do it? Is determinism forcing them? Seems like a pretty individualistic choice to leave everything behind and troops across the desert and so forth to go to another country, or our ancestors who did it. So nobody made any choices. It was just social constructs. Another thing they do with the word social is they use it to suggest to children obligation. So the first thing is determinism. Your life is socially determined, and get them to feel all like hemmed in by that and engaged in actively trying to break out of the prison of social determinism, even though they've already told you you can't because you don't have free will. So it's kind of a weird paradox. You don't have free will, but fight, fight, fight to replace it with a different kind of social order that will then oppress other people who won't have chosen it. So, contradiction is the hallmark of woke. But they then tell the kids, it is your obligation to engage in this battle in perpetuity, like forever revolution, and change the social structures. It's change the social order so that they, oppress differently, I guess, because when are you going to have everyone in agreement with whatever the social constructs are? It's just like cuckoo. But they tell them because others exist who don't like whatever it is that you are or you're doing, you must change. You individual must change. Isn't that interesting? I thought people don't have the free will to change. How are they going to do the work without the free will? How are they going to change their outlook, their mindset? How are they going to, you know, make amends and apologize and examine their whiteness and check their privilege and all this if none of that belongs to them and they didn't choose it in the first place? These are social constructs. They were assigned at birth. I throw this stuff out there for you so you can see how completely ridiculous it is, but also to see how it works. So, for example, we have social studies. We don't have history. And what's the difference? What's the difference, Deb? Why do we have social studies instead of history? Well, because if we had history, that would imply that there are things we are teaching known as facts, objective facts. Like on a date, this happened because of these other things that happened. And then this person said this and that and the other. And then the net impact of that was this, according to the historian who wrote it down. Now, you can disagree with that. You read 3, 4, 5 different versions of history if you are skeptical and you want to see different people's perspectives on the same events or facts. But history says we have artifacts and we have firsthand accounts of things that happen. And then there's some analysis in there. But the stuff happened wasn't like socially constructed that we imagine these things happen. No, they happened. So it's history. It's the story of what came before, how we got to here. Social studies, in contrast, is examining the the interactions over time between the social constructs. That, of course, those socialists have identified the people who believe that human beings don't have free will. We just exist in these little social construct bubbles. And then those social construct bubbles like bump into each other, I guess. And the social awareness of each of the bubbles, conflicts and things happen. And now we have to fix it by rearranging the bubbles, I guess. Except now it's a pie chart called SDG goals. But social studies is more about examining how these different associations and these different little societies impacted each other and what was bad about that, generally speaking. What was bad about that? The ones that came out on top, bad. The ones that came out on the bottom, oppressed. See, social studies, social constructs, social oppression, social awareness of the ones who are at the bottom, that these are the ones on the top, and that has to be changed. That has to be changed. And it's rarely suggested that it should be changed by this coming up to, wherever the other ones are. The like top is the goal, not top like above a pyramid, but like everyone should just be at a higher standard. But that the ones at the top, because they got there by oppression, this is what should happen. Otherwise, why revolution? What revolution overturn? Like flip over, flip the script. Change the social order using the free will you don't have because social constructs. And, getting rid of oppression by being oppressive towards people who through no fault of their own, by your own admission, because social construct, ended up where they ended up. People don't choose to be born white. They don't choose to be born hetero. They don't choose to be born male. They don't choose to be even born Christian. They can choose to be Christian after the fact. But, you've got people saying, nope, it's how you were raised, whatever, little kid. So step back when you hear the word social or you see it in your kid's curriculum. When they talk about social emotional skills, that means how you feel about your status in this social order. Your skills at recognizing what the social order is according to the school, according to the socialists, and then your ability to not only recognize yourself in it, but recognize your role and your obligation to changing it. That's what social awareness is. And self-awareness is where you're like deeply aware of all the social constructs that make up you, which is basically the same thing as saying, understand how oppressed you are and how futile resistance is to this oppression. And if you are an oppressor, how futile it is. You will never be able to not be one. So you're going to have to just keep trying and trying and trying and trying. It's very Calvinistic. Calvin said it's determined. Like you're born, you're either going to go to heaven or you're not. But since you don't know, You should probably work as hard as you possibly can, and, I don't know, maybe God will change his mind. I don't know exactly how Calvinism works, but the idea was it's already been decided, but you don't know. So, hedge your bets. Woke works pretty much the same way. Socialism works pretty much the same way. Atone, just in case. Atone because to do any less means you're now worthless to the social order, the new social order we're building. If you're not gonna join us, then you're obviously against us. That's how they talk about harm. That's a whole other video, harm. But that's how they talk about, oh, this person is a threat. And no, they're just a threat to your goal to upset the social order, flip it over because you think it's binary. It's not. And you're very confused about free will, clearly. And you're confused about the idea that because we choose as humans, we're inclined biologically to live in social groups and that we're social creatures and we like that and we enjoy it and we find life more enriching and fun, that somehow we don't make any choices around that. We do. Of course we do. Of course we do. And we consciously do. And the more modern we get, the more conscious we are about it, or were. Not so sure anymore with the algos and stuff. But I think people teaching your kids about anything with social in front of it, social justice, social studies, social order, social construct, social responsibility. Da, 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 da. Anytime you hear the word social, that is just a kind of code word for collectivism, for lack of free will. And it gets used as often as possible to emphasize the presence of groups and group identities, to downplay the existence of an individual self with agency and will, and to play up a sense of obligation to others, to really make kids feel like their locus of control is outside of themselves and they are helpless. Social as a word is part of the plan to make sure that our kids end up with cognitive distortion and a sense of learned helplessness, to make them dependent on whoever's at the tippy top of this new social order. So I hope that helps you understand the word social in its woke context. Thanks for watching. As always, please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you next time.